Okay, we only got a little bit more time, but I want to cover one last little thing. So this looks great, um, but this is on a desktop.
Hmm.
So what is this going to look like on mobile?
If only there was a way we could tell without having to plug in
Yeah,
a phone or a Quest or something to see.
yeah. So we have
There
a little
actually is.
bit of a trick. It's going to be hard to see because we have this blacked out, but maybe you can do it just in the chat box down
Let
there.
me type in the chat box
Yeah,
what you type. So at the end of your URL for this room up in your browser, you're going to append to the end of that. Just no spaces or anything. Just right after the end of the name of the URL, you're going to type question mark. What is it? Say it again. Say it for me.
quality
Quality
equals low.
low, like that. So if you type that uh, at the end of your URL, which I'm going to do now, and you're going to not see because I have this room blocked out. Quality equals low. It'll reload the scene uh, in low quality, which does a bunch of things uh, that on mobile would make it look more like this.
Hmm.
So you'll notice right away there's no sunlight and shadow on the ground,
Hmm.
but our model has all that lighting information already built in this case, so it looks pretty good.
Yep.
Um, some other models might look a lot flatter. Um,
You can kind of see the background of the scene. There's not like a whole like there's like kind of fake AO in AO is ambient occlusion in some of the gaps of
Definitely
these
out here it looks
tiles.
flatter.
Yeah.
Um,
There's actually some lighting
but
in
in this
here.
scene, I mean, it's pretty good. You may have tried hubs before, where you look at a scene on mobile or low quality and it just looks totally flat. It's hard to tell one wall from
Yeah.
another. And so we did want to give a tip, a Blender tip about taking an asset that you may already have and helping it look a little bit better for mobile platforms. And that involves adding what's called ambient occlusion.
Hmm.
Robert just said it. It sounds like a fancy computer graphics term, and it is, but really what it means is it's talking about how in real life, anything in the world that has little cracks and crevices. I'm going to steal your coffee cup for a second and try to not spill it. Oh, it looks good. Uh, so, like anywhere where one surface touches another, like where this handle touches the cup, or even the inside of the cup at the bottom, or there's different parts. And I'm not talking about like shadows coming from that object, but what I'm talking about, um, let me go full screen a second just while I'm talking about this. Um, so yeah, anything with like little crevices and stuff gets what they call self-shadowing. Like the object casts shadows on itself. And even in a room, if you look in the corners of a room, you'll notice corners tend to be a little bit darker. Even if there's no light shining in that corner or creating a shadow, the surfaces themselves, what happens is light bounces back and forth and energy gets lost, and um, those things get darker naturally. So computer graphics aren't very good at doing that without help. Um, if I just bring a model in here from Sketchfab, I'm gonna make this up as I go along. Um, I'm gonna pull in a model and like show you an example. So this is not a good example of that.
We should do like a well, we could do one of the ones from the medieval contest because they're all like low poly, flat shaded things.
Oh yeah, that's true. Should we do it in Spoke and then bring it
Sure.
in? Let's do that. So let's use our new stuff here. Let's go to Sketchfab, uh, like the
And then
clubhouse props or
oh
something.
yeah, all of these.
All of these are a good example
Yeah,
of
they're all pretty
that.
flat.
I was looking for ones that maybe were even uh, simpler, but still had some
I think
like
these all have
crevices.
AO in them.
Do those all have
Yeah, they're
AO?
pretty good.
Um,
None of these do.
None of them do.
Yeah.
Let's check out this lantern. This might actually be a really good example.
Yeah.
This lantern post, if I drop it in, sure, it's going to cast shadows and stuff by default since that's what we turn on. But you can even see in here.
Oh, you can actually turn on unlit in here as well, and I'll do the same thing.
Oh, good point. You can switch from the default of lit
To
to
not lit.
unlit, and that'll look more like it'll look on mobile
Yep.
platforms.
So it's super flat.
And like this object, it just it's going to lose all of its dimension because we no longer have lighting to like make the top surfaces bright and the side surfaces less bright. It's just going to look kind of uniform flat, especially like this face and this face. They just kind of
Right.
blur together. Um, and that's not ideal. So what I want to show is how you can take an asset like this and do a little bit of work inside Blender to make it look not quite like this one, but closer to having a little more dimension and shading to it. Um, so I'm going to grab this thing. I got to get the URL for it first.
You can
So
grab that right there.
I can just grab it from the model right here in the properties panel. I'm going to Control C to copy it, and I'm going to go over to Sketchfab, and it'll show me it here. This is where it originally came from. Yay, Sketchfab. This is a nice small model. It's only 584 triangles.
Mm-hmm. Thank you,
Um,
Proxy Doug, for making this.
Yay, Proxy Doug. Shout out. Let's see. I'm gonna take the
Oh, there's a
glTF,
Blender one.
or should I take the Blender? Oh, it's already in a Blender format.
Why not?
Let's take it, and I will save that. And then I've got to go over to Blender and open it up. All right, so let's. I'm gonna save this scene because you never know.
It's cool.
This could come in handy.
Yeah, let's publish that scene.
All right, let's call this statue
I don't think it's typing.
Achilles,
Oh,
just so I have it
creating a folder for it.
in
Got it.
case we want to use this for a future
You're
tutorial.
organizing your files? Who does that?
I know I'm a stickler about organizing
It's not
files, sort
new
of.
folder
If you
one.
if you looked any deeper than that, you'd be like, this is a mess. You're out of your mind. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and import, actually not import, open because it's a blend file from my downloads, wherever that went. Where did it get saved? Or it's possible that it is. Oh, it's still
We gotta
zipped up.
unzip it.
I'm
Yep.
gonna unzip it, extract it. Okay, it should be in here now. Let's go to downloads. Where are you? Lantern post. Here we go. Source post. There we go.
Cool.
Here it is in Blender. Pretty simple model. Uh, I'm in edit mode now. You can see the polygons. It's cleanly made. I got to give it that. Um, Nothing really outrageous about this model at all. We could probably actually smooth it out and give it a little more detail, but even without doing that, there are things we can do to make this look a little better. Um, Number one, some of the faces it's a little bit faceted. Some of these bevels might look better if they were smoother. There's some easy tricks to do that. I don't know how much I want to do
I
that
think it
really.
fits the style of their kit though.
It does fit, yeah. Um, let's leave all that stuff
Yeah.
alone. Instead, let's just focus on the texture. So I'm going to go over to oh, the tabs are different because this is
Yeah.
somebody else's Blender file. So I'm just going to add a new workspace for um, shading and look at this thing in here. This doesn't actually have a material on it at all. So
Really?
yeah, I guess it didn't have one. It was just, at least not in the blend file,
Yeah.
which is okay. Really, we just need a gray kind of color, but might as well show from scratch, I guess, in Blender, how
Yeah.
you might do that. You're going to select the model. I'm in the shading tab, which will be there by default in a regular Blender, like starting from scratch. Um, I just, oh, I guess we're okay. Sorry, I just had a weird thought, but I'm going to go over to the properties of this thing, and I'm going to go down to the uh, menu called Material. It looks like a little pinkish reddish ball, checker ball thing over here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit New, and this is going to create a new material for this thing since I have it selected. And you can see down here it did what we saw before, where it made a node and it made an output, and that's all it did really. Um, and then over here, you may want to name it. You can either name it right here, or you can name it down here. It's the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and just call this lantern material. Um, like I said before, there are some things you can adjust in here, like the shininess or how metallic it is, or stuff like that. Really, what I need though is to play around with the base color a little bit,
We just want to make it back to that kind of
kind of
gray
grayish color.
brown color.
Um, Concrete, if it's made of concrete, which usually these were, um, usually the value for that you're gonna not have too low, otherwise it's just not gonna get enough light.
You're
Um,
using
Probably around zero point 0.7.
hue, saturation, and value.
Yeah, I mean it has
So,
no color at all.
right.
You may decide like, oh, I want it a little bit yellowish or greenish or bluish or something. That's okay. But you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
Really, I'm just playing with the value, which is the brightness
Okay.
of the thing. Um, and of course, if you wanted to paint a texture on this, you could. I'm not going to do all that. What I do care about though is creating a little bit of ambient occlusion. Um,
And so that's going to be a separate texture that we plug into this.
yes, but we have to actually generate the ambient occlusion
Okay.
first. And the cool thing about Blender is it knows how to do that. What it does is it looks at the model. It basically shoots a bunch of rays at it from different angles, and it figures out how it would sort of shadow itself a little bit um, based on like ambient lighting. So you don't actually have to create any lights to do this or anything. But first, what you need to do is create a target for this thing uh, to render this texture into. And what I mean by that is inside your shader editor, you need to go to add and choose texture and then image texture. So it's add texture, image texture. And that'll create an empty one of these. Now you saw this before when we had the statue texture plugged in here. And if you had an existing one, you would hit open, but we don't. We have to make one. So we're going to first hit new, and we get a little dialog that pops up. I like to name this thing like AO or AO baked or something like that. And then a size. I think a 1024 is great. We don't need much more resolution than
Hmm.
that. This thing isn't going to be like crispy, sharp shadows or anything. We don't need any alpha. But the one thing you might want to do to start out is to give this thing a little bit of brightness. Again, just bring the value up a bit, maybe to zero point 0.5 or so. Um, I'll talk about that a little bit later, why we do that, but that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to hit OK. And so what this just generated was a big square 1K gray texture. How do you see it? Well, you can actually view it over here if you'd like. Um, there's a little drop down, and you can pick that thing you just made called AO Baked. And there it is. Okay, that's not very exciting. If I plug that in anywhere, you wouldn't even really see anything. Um, but we need this as a target for this AO operation to render to. So this is the one sort of weird thing in Blender. Like you need this, and you also need this node selected. For now, I won't select it, and then I'll show you. You have to do it later. How do we do it? What do? We select our model, and we're going to do a couple weird things over here. We're going to first go to the rendering, sorry, the scene setting here, which is this little. I think it's supposed to look like a digital camera or something. At the very, almost at the top. And we're going to change the renderer from the EV renderer, which is the new default built-in renderer in
That's the
Blender,
real-time render,
the
right?
real-time renderer.
Yep.
It's very pretty, but will not work for this. So we have to switch it to the old thing called Cycles. Cycles is a very powerful ray tracing engine. Um, and you can leave this alone if you have a dedicated GPU. You can turn that on, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But what Cycles has that EV does not is a section called Bake. And the Bake section is where you're going to make the AO map. And the way it works is when you open up Bake, there's a lot of choices here. And we're actually going to change this Bake type to a thing called ambient occlusion. It's the second one in the list. And when it's set to ambient occlusion or AO, there's not much to do other than uh, make sure that this is selected over here so that when I hit bake, it bakes into this texture. And I say this is kind of weird because I don't find it very intuitive in Blender. Like, how would you know that
Those
that's
two things are
connected to
connected.
that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, but you just, as long as it's selected,
As long as it's selected, when I
then
hit
it should
bake
work.
here, it's going to do this magic operation, and you're actually going to see it over here because I have it showing that map. Um, Now, the one thing you might want to do in this case is turn off clear image because we want to just render on top of this gray texture we've already made. If I turn on clear image, it's going to first black it out and then
Hmm.
render it. And the reason that we want to have sort of a brighter color background to start with is that if any part of this thing gets rendered a little fuzzy or not quite right, um, it would be better to have those pixels blend with a nice bright background or medium bright background instead of a black one, so that you don't end up with like little. I don't know if you've ever tried to render something and you got like weird black edges
Mm.
along your model polygons and stuff. But it's not the most important thing in the world. But I am going to turn that off since I'm starting with a gray texture. Have it selected, and now I'm going to hit bake, and you're going to watch over here. It's going to render out this kind of weird looking. Oh wow, look at the UVs of this thing.
Oh yeah,
They're all crammed along the side.
probably should
We could get a lot more resolution.
re-UV that.
I should redo the UVs on this. If it already had a texture, I'd be in a little more trouble.
Hmm.
But instead, so here's another lesson. You can select this object. Um, I'm going to switch to the tab called UV editing, where it shows you a model on one side and a split screen with the UVs. Now, I didn't expect to go into a whole lesson about what
Yeah,
UVs
I
are.
think there's a one that'll just give us an okay.
Yeah, basically what this will do, if I go into edit mode, which tab, and then I hit 3 to select all the faces. Why won't it select all the faces? I don't know.
Is this that thing? This is. Oh
Oh,
no, never mind.
I was hitting the wrong button,
Okay.
apparently. Anyway, select all the faces with the letter A,
Yep.
and then there is a menu, which for some reason is not showing in my viewport because I opened up somebody else's blend file who turned it off, and now I've got problems. How do I show that? Somebody in the stream tell me how to show it because I forget.
Um,
Where are all my? Oh, they're at the bottom. Look,
there we go. Yeah.
somebody moved them to the bottom. I don't like them at the bottom. I like them at the top. Here we
Cool.
go. Choose UV, and you can try just unwrap. I actually like the one called Smart UV
For this
Project.
one, maybe even
Maybe
light
even
map?
cube projection, but I'm going to do Smart UV Project.
Yeah.
And the only thing I do is set this second setting here,
The island
island
margin.
margin, to about zero point 0.1
Okay.
or 0.01.
And that just keeps things from bleeding.
When it unwraps it, all the different pieces that get unwrapped
Yeah.
leaves a little space between them so they don't overlap at all. So when I hit OK, fingers crossed,
Oh,
what happened?
Don wants you to move the video.
Okay, I will move the video, but I'm also trying to figure out um, why it didn't work. Let's see, video's in the way. Let's put the video in the middle.
Yeah.
Thank you. UV, smart UV project. Do it. What happened? Why did you not do it? Maybe it did it.
I think you need to open a texture that has the UVs in it.
No, it should show them no matter what.
Oh, okay.
This U oh, there they are.
Oh,
I think I had the editor to something else.
okay.
This is the UV editor. Look at what it did.
Yeah, that's
Took
pretty
the
good.
model, it basically cut it up as if it were paper craft and like laid it out onto one big sheet. Now that margin is how much space there is between these things. If you're dealing with a very low res texture, you're going to want a bigger margin so
Hmm.
that they don't bleed into each other. I'll do it again just so you can see. If I do smart UV project and I set this margin say to zero point 0.1 instead of 0.01, the space between these will change. Now there's more room.
So is that a good value there?
That's not bad for this.
Okay.
I would go with that. Now if you want to be very particular, there are things you can do on this model like define where the seams should be and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into that today, but very useful.
Hmm.
You can actually mark like, okay, this is where I want it to cut, and this is where I want it to how it split it up. For just doing an AO bake, doing a
Yep.
basic smart UV project will get you what you want. But you do need to have this thing unwrapped in a good way. Before I did this, all of these UVs were laid out in this tiny little edge down here, and I don't know why. But um, now we can go back to our shading view, and let's bake that AO again. So I'm just gonna get back to object mode here. Make sure that my AO baked image node here is selected, and I'm gonna hit bake. And now we're gonna watch this again. This time I actually want to clear the image
Yeah.
because this is still there. Here it goes. There's a little progress meter at the bottom of your screen in case you're like, what is happening?
It's not doing the thing, but it is.
There it is. So that's what it did.
Cool.
How do we see this on the model? Well, we're not seeing it right now. If you want to just test to see what the heck it looks like, you can just plug the color into the base color and just take a look at it.
Okay.
This is what it would look like. So actually, that's pretty cool. You're getting
Yeah.
little shadow in the crevices. Here's where you really start to see it. It's a little grainy, and there are ways to clean that up. I'm not going to worry about that today. It's definitely darker inside the deeper cavities. Um, and you can see it in the cracks here like this. Now there are settings you can do to change how much or how little it does all that, but as subtle as this may seem, it's going to make the thing look so much better
Right.
inside hubs or spoke
Especially in on mobile where we don't have
where you
lighting.
don't have any of that information.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you can see all these nice little dark cracks, but we're not plugging it into the base color. We actually need it in the AO channel. Which brings me to an unfortunate thing about this principled BSDF node in Blender. It has settings for lots of cool stuff like roughness and metallic and all kinds of stuff that even we can't use
Hmm.
in hubs. However, it does not have a place to plug in the AO map. Wah,
Yeah.
wah. So there is a workaround to make this export with an AO map, and this is not known by a lot of people, I think, because it's kind of buried um, inside of the Blender documentation, but it is there. So if I switch back over, you will notice that inside the Blender 2.8 reference manual, if you just search the doc, which again, my video is in the way, if you search the doc here for glTF, you can see I've searched for it a lot. The first link on here about glTF 2.0, this tells you exactly how to set up your shader so that it exports properly. Um, it explains a lot about how these maps work, which go read that if you want to know more about some of the blah blah that we've been talking about. Um, but it tells you, if you scroll down a bit, how to hook up your metallic and roughness maps and how important it is that you set them like to non-color, for
Hmm.
example, and split them and blah blah blah. Baked ambient occlusion tells you how to do that. So that's the section you're looking for. And what it actually tells you is you don't pipe this thing into the principled BSDF
BSDF.
node
Yeah.
at all. You actually pipe it into this weird little workaround. It's a shader node group, and you might go, how the heck do I make one of those? I will show you how to make one of those. It is not super intuitive, but
But
you can do it.
we gotta move the.
And I gotta move this thing out of the way.
Yeah.
There's no good place for a video. Okay, I also don't need it to be this giant rectangle that it is, but whatever. Let's see. So there's a couple ways to make this group node. Um, what I tend to do is the thing that sucks about it is that you have to make a node to put into a group before you can make a group.
Hmm.
You can't just make a group node. Even though if you go to add group, make group, uh, it won't work if nothing is selected, I think. Yeah, like nothing happens. So you have to have something selected. So what I usually do, and this is sort of a dumb thing, is I try to find a node that has the least number of inputs and outputs on it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, gamma. There's like a gamma node. Add color
Probably
gamma.
has like one value.
Has like a couple
Oh,
values on
okay.
it. Fine. Have that thing selected and then group it. And I do it with Control G, but you can add group, make group. And what this does, it puts you in this weird sort of green mode where we're now in the background seeing our graph from before, but now we're zoomed in to this group node that we just made. And what it does is it takes the node you had selected already, which is this gamma node, and then like makes some inputs for it and makes some outputs for it.
Okay.
It's kind of dumb, but this is how it works. Um, by the way, these groups are really nice when you have a really complicated graph and you want to like
Right.
just organize it a little
Can't
better.
really use that too much for hubs, but
Yeah, it's not going to work for us, but we do need it to make an AO output. So you can go ahead and select that gamma node you made and just delete it. I just hit delete. The outputs aren't important at all. I'm not sure you can delete it, but uh, you
you can just
can
leave it how it is.
you can just leave it how it is. The inputs you're going to change though. This is what we need to change. And in order to change these, you need to have the properties open for them. So there's a little panel over here on the right that you can also open and close with the letter N, just like in the other view. And what you're going to do is select the inputs and you're going to get rid of them. I'm going to start by getting rid of the color one. Um, you can delete the gamma one or you can just change it. I'll just change it. It's
Yeah.
called gamma. Let's stretch this out a little bit. I'm going to change the name to, this is important, capital O, occlusion. So it's Occlusion. Don't worry about any of the values underneath it. We don't use them at all. They're just there. But you'll see the group input now says occlusion. I'm done in here. If you want, you can delete this output one. Don't even need it, but I'm going to leave that one
And
there.
nothing has to be connected or anything
Nothing
like
has
that.
to be hooked up to anything.
Cool.
You do need to back up out of this node by hitting this up arrow over on the upper right.
Okay.
So now we're back out and we have this group node. However, in order for this to export correctly, you have to name the properties of this node to the right thing. And you'll see over, well, you can look back in that documentation we were on before for Blender. But the answer to this, and this is super confusing because there's like 3 places to name things. There's the group, there's the label, but what you actually need to change is the properties. So we expand that a little bit. So instead of it being called node group right here,
Mm-hmm.
you actually type GL and then capital TF space capital settings. GLTF settings. And that, for whatever reason, auto names all of it.
Yeah.
Now, I actually ended up adding this node to my startup file so that whenever I make a new scene in Blender, I can just make one of these nodes. It actually shows up in my list somewhere in here. I forget where.
Maybe it's their startup file or no? Oh,
Oh,
there
there
it
it is
is.
under group. It's
Under
called
group.
GLTF
Okay.
setting. Like it'll show up there for me, so I don't have to do this every time. But anyway, it's good to know. All you do is you pipe the color of the AO into the occlusion value there. That's it.
And now we can export.
And now we can export,
Cool.
and it'll have AO,
Sweet. Let's do it.
even if we don't do anything else to it.
We should make it. Did we set the base color yet?
The base color is like a slight gray,
Okay.
whitish gray.
Cool.
Um, I'm going to export this and compare it to the
Maybe
other
we should
one.
save.
Yeah, I should probably save it. You're right. Um, let's. I'll save it in their folder too, just so I have it. I'll call this Lantern 2.0. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and export it as a glTF. Well, actually a GLB is the default. And I'm going to do selected objects. I'm going to call it Lantern 2. I don't like having decimals in a file name, but
Mm-hmm.
so Lantern 2. I'm going to hit export. Lantern 2 has AO, and you will already see the difference in hubs when I go back over here, um, between having this one that came in from Sketchfab with no AO and mine, which I'm going to upload to my assets. So I'm going to my assets, models, just like I did with the statue, and I'm going to upload wherever that thing was in Lantern 2. It's a pretty small file. It's only half a meg. So there it is, and I'm going to drop it in the scene right next to the other one. That looks terrible. Why? Well, it's set to unlit. Let's change it to lit. Should look better than that, should it not?
Yeah, it
Oh,
should.
well, it's not casting or receiving shadows
Well,
for
that
one.
shouldn't matter for unlit. Wonder if it didn't go into. You
What did I do wrong?
should try publishing it.
Let's see what it looks like when we publish it. You never know. Could be just because it's so much brighter than the other one. Oh, well, no, that should be okay. Let's see. Let's go back over to here and refresh in hubs and take a look.
And we're on quality equals low still.
Yep, quality is still set low, so well the AO is there.
Yeah, so that must be a bug in
Could
Spoke.
just be
I
because
haven't
it's
just.
bright, but the AO is in fact showing on that model.
Yeah,
Take a look.
and it's in low quality, and it actually looks like it has some depth
It
to
has some
it.
dimension, has some shadow in there. Now, will this look a lot better with a base color map? Yes, absolutely. Instead of just being a flat color. Um, but I think that mostly the difference you're seeing here is because this one was significantly darker.
Hmm.
Um, so when I export out of Blender, I may want to lower the base color value a little bit. But you can definitely see there are some you know different values there. And you know what? Another way to test when you're doing this stuff, rather than bringing it into Spoke and then exporting, is just drag and drop it right into this window.
Right.
And the nice thing about that is you can throw the object around like it was a duck or something
Should we do
else.
that?
Yeah, so I can actually go to my the folder where I saved it.
It's off screen, but
It's
we're
off
doing it.
screen, but I'm just going to that same file explorer folder and I'm grabbing lantern2.glb and I'm dragging and dropping it into this window and I'm going to let go. And there
There
it
it
is.
is.
Now it comes in a weird size, but you can actually
There it is.
grab this thing and use the little rotate and look at it from different angles
We should
or
pin that
scale it up.
object, and we should refresh in the high quality mode.
Okay, so I'll pin it.
Yep.
So
So
that'll,
that's going to stay in the room, and then when we refresh,
I'm
but
going to,
without quality
without
is low,
quality equals low, I'm going to get rid of that.
then it should be in high quality because we're on desktop, and
This
that
one won't
object
cast a
should still be
shadow,
there.
just so you know.
Yeah, right. There it is.
But there it is.
Yeah, it looks great.
So you can definitely take objects that have no AO and make them look a lot better. I think I might have an example here. I do. Here is a cube with a bunch of, I did cooking show this for us. Here is a cube that has a concrete texture on it of sorts, and the base color, and no AO. So even in high quality mode,
It
it's
doesn't
a
look
little
great.
flat.
Yeah.
It's a little bit flat.
Well, it doesn't cast shadows on itself because it's an interactable object, and we just don't have that turned on.
Right. But if I grab one with AO and compare it, just the amount of depth you get out of this, there's a significant difference. Where are you? Where are you, open part? Oh, there we go. So this one like just has a little bit more dimension to it because of the AO baked into it.
Yeah, looks a lot better.
To the untrained eye, it might be a little subtle, but it's definitely
And on
better.
a lot of these flat surfaces that we're going to see coming out of like some of the assets in the medieval fantasy contest pieces. Those are going to look kind of flat on mobile devices without any lighting information.
Let's
So
pin these guys again, and then I'll switch again to low
yeah,
quality.
so it's going to be really nice if you're a content creator and you want to make your scene look really good on every device. Uh, Go ahead and add some AO to your scene.
Now there's a big difference.
Hmm.
One of them you can totally see that it's concentric squares, and the other one just looks
Yeah, there's not
super flat.
depth. You can kind of only tell it just because it has some noise on the texture.
So this same thing that I just did to bake AO, that can apply to avatars. If you create avatars that have little details in their face or in their body parts or things, having some AO on the base model like that is going to make a big difference, especially for people who are viewing hubs on a mobile device
Hmm.
or standalone like a Quest.
Cool. I think that's about all the time we have. Um, but yeah, we went over quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah,
We got mesh decimation. We got.
texture resolution. We got lighting inside uh, inside hubs and spoke in
Mhm.
general, sort of 3D graphics
Yep, shadow
lesson there.
maps,
Shadow maps,
and now
AO.
AO.
Yeah,
All these things are really great, especially when you combine them all together to create really awesome scenes like this that work well across all these different platforms. Um, so if you want to learn more about how to create these scenes, just keep an eye on our Twitter, and you should definitely come join our Discord. We're in there all the time. You can come ask us questions. Uh, Pretty soon here, we'll be launching a documentation site where you can come find a whole bunch of these resources. Um, but yeah, it's been good. Thanks everyone for watching.
yeah. We've been excited to see a lot of people are starting to use the architecture kit, and yeah, keep your eyes on Spoke and for updates like the Rock kit and other things that are coming in, like the Sketchfab assets. There's plenty to play with in there, so yeah, and keep creating stuff and letting us know about it. Make sure inside our hubs Discord you post your stuff in the show and tell channel, and we'll take a look at it and maybe feature it on here for the next one. So
Hmm.
cool. Is that it, everybody? Any other questions? I don't know. I guess we're done making scenes for
Yeah,
today.
until next time.
All right, we are going to sign off.
All right, see you all.
Thanks, guys.